the protagonist of this narrative, reflects upon the passage of time since the commencement of her third life. With her emaciated hand and visible signs of mistreatment from the castle, this unfortunate child has not even had a sip of water for several days. Is she once again abandoned by her parents in this existence? Until now, she resided in a minuscule room, devoid of any knowledge about her true identity, and was provided with only enough sustenance to prevent her from perishing. Vivi attempts to reach for the bread resting on the table, but her efforts fall short. Consequently, she resorts to hopping in order to successfully grasp the bread. Finally, with great anticipation, Vivielle takes her first bite of the bread, only to be overcome with sadness as its sogginess and sour odor indicate its prolonged spoilage. She was informed that she would not receive anything else until tomorrow's dinner, thus compelling her to consume this unsatisfactory meal. As the door swung open, a woman entered and immediately began reprimanding Vivi, demanding an explanation for her presence and accusing her of once again pilfering bread. Vivi, visibly frightened, vehemently denies the accusation, but her protest is swiftly interrupted by the woman, who insists on hearing the truth before threatening to evict her. Feeling utterly helpless, Vivi apologizes and implores for forgiveness. In a fit of anger, the woman forcefully slaps Vivi across the face, berating her for lying and hurling derogatory remarks. She warns Vivi that she will endure a week of hunger as punishment. Overwhelmed with emotion, Vivi begins to weep, contemplating why she deserves such severe treatment. The woman continues to lash out at Vivi, questioning her right to cry out loud. Vivi, in excruciating pain, believes she can endure this suffering. As a child, she desperately pleads for assistance from anyone who might hear her cries. Suddenly, a nobleman arrives and sternly demands an explanation for the commotion. Upon recognizing the nobleman as Duke Dante, the woman becomes visibly anxious. Vivi wonders why a high-ranking aristocrat like a duke is involved in this particular situation. The frightened woman attempts to conceal her actions as she kneels before the duke, stumbling through an explanation and beseeching him while insisting that it is all a misunderstanding. She pleads for mercy, insisting that she made a momentary mistake but has been diligently caring for the girl. The duke repeats his question, questioning her lack of shame. The lady continues to beg, repeating her excuses and pleading for understanding. Observing the duke, Vivi privately concludes that although she is unfamiliar with his identity, his intense interrogation of the woman suggests that he may be able to assist her. With tears streaming down her face, she rushes towards the duke, asserting that the woman is lying. Vivi implores the duke, recounting the abuse and starvation she endured daily. She promises to do anything he asks if he will take her away. The duke lifts Vivi, commenting on her lightness, and then covers her while commanding the guard to execute the woman. The lady becomes flustered and addresses the duke. In that moment, Vivi falls into a deep sleep, unaware of what will transpire next. Upon awakening in Dante Manor the following morning, Viv finds herself in a state of surprise. Suddenly, she hears a voice calling out to her, exclaiming that she is awake. Startled, Viv trembles with fear. Apologetically, the person asks if they startled her. Nervously, Viv inquires about their identity. The person introduces themselves as Elisa, her nanny, expressing disbelief at finally meeting her and stating that they will be responsible for her well-being from now on. Viv repeats the name Elisa questioningly. Elisa smiles and explains that her grace entrusted Viv to her before passing away. Vivi wonders if this was once her home. She recalls how people used to refer to the woman as, "Your Grace," when she was born and begins to realize that the woman must have been her mother. Elisa takes Viv's hand and explains that the late Duchess was en route to visit her relatives before giving birth but went into premature labor. Despite receiving news of her demise, the Duke was unable to retrieve Vivi due to the presence of monsters. They have been eagerly awaiting the day they could finally meet her for 3 long years. Vivi's heart aches as she recalls the hurtful words that were spoken to her, claiming that no one would ever come for her and that she was nothing more than discarded trash. Elisa, filled with disbelief, condemns the woman who uttered such cruel words and advises Vivi not to believe any of it. Doubt lingers in Vivi's mind as she wonders if Elisa is speaking the truth. Finally, she gathers the courage to ask Elisa a question that has been weighing on her for a long time. She asks for name. Elisa gently holds Vivi's small hand and proceeds to explain everything, including Vivi's family background. Overwhelmed with emotion, Elisa sheds tears before guiding Vivi towards a meal. Vivi, now known as Vivielle Dante, reveals her true name and shares that she resides in Ion, the very same kingdom where she was born in her previous life. She finds it intriguing how, until recently, she struggled to have basic necessities like food and proper hygiene, yet now she appears as a lady from a wealthy household, which seems fitting for her new name, Vivielle. Elisa suggests they have a meal and take a stroll afterwards, to which Vivi agrees with a nod. However, she hesitates, still in disbelief that she is being treated so kindly, something she had never experienced in her past lives. Despite the sudden elevation to the daughter of a duke, there is an underlying uneasiness within her. As Vivi walks through the corridors, she gazes around and ponders why fate led her to this particular place. She contemplates the reputation of House Dante, known for their ruthlessness, a family that even turns their swords against their own kin if they step out of line. Upon entering the dining room, Elisa announces Vivi's presence to the Duke. Vivi's anxiety heightens as she feels the Duke's intense gaze upon her. She wonders how he can stare at his long-lost daughter with such intensity, knowing well of his brutal nature. She reflects on the rumors surrounding House Dante, suggesting that each member possesses formidable powers of their own. Vivi fears that once the Duke realizes she lacks any special abilities, she may meet the same tragic fate she experienced in her previous lives. Determined to live a long and fulfilling life, she resolves to win her father's favor, especially now that she holds the title of a Duke's daughter. Upon seeing the paper in the Duke's hand, Vivi immediately recognizes it and assumes it's a math problem. Eagerly, she approaches the Duke, convinced that it's a question related to calculating the volume of his spar. Requesting the paper, Vivi's academic excellence in architecture during her college years makes middle school math seem like a breeze. She persists in obtaining the paper. Suddenly, Elisa intervenes and apologizes, acknowledging Vivi's inquisitive nature. The Duke hands over the paper to Vivi, intrigued to see what she will do. Excitedly, Vivi examines the paper and realizes that it's indeed a question about finding the volume of a sphere. As she begins working on the math problem, she deduces that this is likely related to creating a fireball for combat, given House Dante's focus on developing weapons and magic tools. Upon completing the calculation, Vivi confidently announces that the volume of the sphere is 113.04. Observing her, the Duke's expression changes, and Vivi understands her error. She realizes that she jumped to conclusions without a proper formula, indicating the complexity of the problem. Worried about explaining her quick solution in under 3 minutes, Vivi anxiously contemplates the unusual situation. The Duke inquires about her method of solving the problem, questioning if she learned it from a particular woman. Vivi internally dismisses the idea, as the woman never even disclosed her name. Nervously, Vivi clarifies that the solution simply came to her upon seeing the problem, hoping to avoid further scrutiny from the Duke. Elisa reassures the Duke that Lady Vivielle is indeed in Dante, prompting his curiosity. Vivi feels relieved by Elisa's intervention but swiftly changes the subject by mentioning her hunger with a charming expression. The Duke promptly orders a meal to be prepared for her. Upon beholding the food, Vivi is filled with wonder. The chef clarifies that they need to gradually increase the food amount based on the doctor's orders, hence the limited preparation. Despite this, Vivi muses to herself that it still seems like a substantial amount of food. She recollects her father's directive to the butler to ensure her stomach remains full before he heads to his afternoon meeting. While eating, Vivi ponders whether solving the math problem softened the Duke's demeanor. Elisa guides Vivi on a stroll, expressing her desire to give her a tour of the castle, starting with the late Duchess's favorite spot. Vivi expresses her admiration, noting the beauty of the surroundings. Elisa mentions that the Duke wanted to maintain it exactly as it was before the Duchess's passing, hence it is tended to by 5 gardeners. Vivi is taken aback by the number, deeming it quite a lot. As they walk, Vivi marvels at the blooming flowers despite the chilly weather. She wonders if her father treated her mother differently. Elisa notices Vivi wearing her late mother's ring and comments that her mother wore it throughout her life. She confirms that the ring size is specific to the wearer. Vivi is surprised and inquires if it is indeed her mother's ring, recollecting her past life. Vivi remembers receiving the ring from a pregnant woman she encountered before her death. She wonders about the circumstances and realizes she cannot ask Elisa about it. Suddenly, the Duke appears stern and questions why the child is in the garden. Anxiously, Vivi turns to see her father. Elisa explains to the Duke that she escorted Lady Vivi to the garden after she finished her meal to aid in digestion. Vivi wonders why her father is gazing at her in such a manner and if he disapproves of her presence. She becomes fearful, accidentally stepping on a plant. Vivi, now filled with fear, worries that she has damaged her father's cherished garden. Fear grips Vivi as she trembles, thinking that judging by his expression, the Duke appears quite enraged. She worries about the possibility of him kicking her out. The Duke approaches Vivi and grabs her hand. Terrified, Vivi thinks that since this was her fault she may be beaten or even thrown out. Tearfully, she apologizes to the Duke. After that, Vivi is surprised that she wasn't kicked out. Looking around, she wonders if the papers are math problems and if the Duke is telling her to solve them to avoid being thrown out. Jade and Leah approach her, explaining that under the Duke's orders, they are to tend to her as her personal maids and they present gifts from the Duke. Vivi thinks that he sent her gifts and assigned her 2 personal maids. She questions if he's not going to get rid of her after all. Jane mentions that she heard the Duke treasures the quill pen, while Lydia remarks that it must be true that the Duke is putting in a lot of effort to take care of Vivi. Vivi thinks to herself as she writes with a pen, noting that the family crest is engraved on it. She contemplates that if the Duke kicks her out, she will sell it for an emergency fund. Jade and Lydia offer food to Vivi. Jade encourages her to try some, mentioning that only 100 of these are made by master artisans of the capital each day. Vivi eats with great delight, thinking about the delightful flavor. She reflects on how before she would have filled her stomach with crumbs from the floor, but here everything tastes good and these cookies are the most scrumptious things she's ever eaten. She can't believe how happy she feels, calls out to Jane and Lydia and suggests they eat together since she can't finish them alone. Lydia hesitates, questioning if they're allowed to eat such precious cookies. Vivi reassures them and suggests they share since she's sharing with them. With a smile, she asked them to promise to share anything yummy they come across with her too. Jade and Lydia agree. They hug Vivi and express excitement about her upcoming birthday party next month. Vivi thinks about how it won't be easy adjusting to this place in a child's body. She just wants to live there for a long time without worrying about where her next meal will come from, at least until she's able to become independent. She believes she has plenty of time before she becomes an adult, so she has a long way to go, or so she thought. 1 month later, someone announces that Lady Vivielle has gone missing. Vivi wonders what happened last night and why she suddenly turned into an adult yesterday. Vivi, feeling sleepy, falls asleep. Lydia playfully places a pillow under Viv's head and laughs, remarking that she knew this would happen but that Vivi must wake up now. Vivi protests, saying she's still growing so she needs lots of sleep. Lydia insists it's not the case for today and offers to wash her face to help her wake up. After wiping her face, Vivi feels happy, thinking it's wonderful to live as the daughter of a rich duke. Lydia reminds her that today is her birthday. Vivi realizes with surprise that it's her birthday. Vivi reflects on her time since arriving, realizing it's been over a month. She learned something important from the maids. She had been reborn 100 years after her second life. She asked about the tyrant who killed all architects and was told it was an incident that happened about 100 years ago, and the tyrant stepped down from the throne about 70 years ago. Vivi can't believe he still reigned over the kingdom for 30 more years after committing such atrocities. Though he's dead, she can't help but despise him. Looking at herself in the mirror, Vivi pokes her face, noting that she still can't get used to seeing this face. Every time she looks in the mirror, it's so squishy and soft. Jade and Lydia notice Vivi and comment on her cute face, expressing a desire to capture them on a video stone. Vivi feels embarrassed by their attention. Jade remarks that it would be a shame not to record her when she's so charming, while Lydia asks her to do it again. Reluctantly, Vivi agrees, thinking she can't believe she's doing this, but she considers it a gift to their fans. She beams and pokes her face for Jade and Lydia, who praise her. Suddenly, they realize the time and suggest they get going because the Duke will be coming to congratulate Vivi. Vivi expresses surprise at the news. 30 minutes later, Vivi is at the dining table. Jade hesitates to tell her that the Duke isn't coming. Vivi feels sad, understanding why he wouldn't want to come since it's the same day he lost his wife, but she was still looking forward to it. Elisa reassures her, asking her to be patient as he'll be there soon. Vivi insists that they go on and make a wish. Elisa asks what she's going to wish for. Vivi responds in a sad tone that she just wants to celebrate her next birthday with her father. Suddenly, the Duke enters, explaining that he was late because of work. Vivi, seeing him, feels happy and stammers out, "Father." During the meal, the Duke asks if Vivi has been waiting long. Vivi responds happily, thanking him for coming. The Duke explains that there was a group of robbers and if he didn't do anything, civilians would have been in danger, so he had to take care of them. However, he assures Vivi that he won't be late next year. Vivi thinks to herself, pondering whether it's just her or if it sounds like he's apologizing. She acknowledges that he was late because of his duties and remembers someone saying that you can't pay too many compliments to someone who did a good job. She concludes that if she is to win his favor, his late arrival is nothing to be concerned about. Vivi expresses excitement and admiration towards her father for teaching the robbers a lesson, giving him a thumbs up. An awkward silence follows, causing Vivi to feel uncomfortable and wish she could disappear. The Duke asks what the gesture means, and Vivi, feeling nervous, improvises, saying it means he'll be able to conquer the world with his awesomeness. She wonders if he will believe her. The Duke smiles and responds, suggesting she continue holding up her thumbs after cutting the cake. Elisa encourages Vivi to make a wish and blow out the candles, celebrating her birthday. Vivi feels genuinely happy that everyone is celebrating with her. The Duke stands up and smiles, wishing her a happy birthday and asking if there's anything she wants. Vivi asks if he means like a birthday present, causing the Duke to frown, questioning if she thought she would receive a gift for her birthday. Nervously, Vivi clarifies that it's not the case, she just hasn't chosen yet. She frets about what to do since she already received so much. The Duke then suggests she tell him what she wants before her next birthday and leaves. Vivi notices something on the Duke's shoulder. She screams out to him, calling him father. The Duke turns towards her, inquiring about the issue at hand. Vivi hesitates, contemplating whether it could be something other than blood since he doesn't appear to be in pain. She reassures him that it's nothing and bids him farewell. Vivi then contemplates, realizing that she might be imagining things. Jade lifts Vivi and escorts her to her room, mentioning that she will sing her a lullaby now that the birthday celebration is over. Vivi eagerly agrees, expressing her desire to sleep early in order to grow taller and become an adult. Jade asks if Vivi wants to grow up quickly, to which Vivi responds affirmatively. Suddenly, her ring sparkles in the present as an adult. Vivi reflects on her wish to become old enough to navigate the world independently. However, she didn't anticipate it happening so rapidly. She panics, questioning why she suddenly grew so big after falling asleep and worries about what to do. As this situation has never occurred in her previous experiences, Viv's mind races as she attempts to calm herself down. She realizes the gravity of her predicament. If she is discovered, she could be mistaken for a kidnapper and face severe consequences. Deciding to escape, she cautiously peers outside, hoping to go unnoticed until morning. Suddenly, the guard spots her and interrogates her presence. Viv, feeling anxious, realizes she has been caught by the gatekeeper and must reveal her true identity. The following morning, the Duke orders everyone to resume their duties instead of idling around. The Baron expresses concern about the poison potentially spreading throughout the Duke's body and questions why he is acting so recklessly when surrounded by enemies. The Duke dismisses the Baron's worries, reminding him that he talks excessively. Despite this, the Baron insists that it is the Duke's responsibility to take care of them, especially considering that the bandits employ poison-tipped arrows. The Duke instinctively recalls Viv's words of gratitude towards him. Determined, the Duke acknowledges that their discovery of the specific poison used was not a waste of time. The Baron attempts to clarify his previous statement. Suddenly, Elisa bursts into the Duke's office. Bursting into the room with visible distress, Elisa tearfully informs the Duke of a terrible event that has occurred. Collapsing onto the floor, she is met with an anxious inquiry from the Duke, who desperately wants to know what is wrong. Elisa proceeds to disclose the shocking news that Lady Vivielle has gone missing, leaving the Duke in a state of disbelief. The previous night, Vivielle had encountered the gatekeeper, who questioned her about her destination and affiliation, causing her to feel uneasy. In an attempt to remain composed, Vivielle, in her thoughts, strategizes on how to handle the situation. She fabricates a story, claiming to be a maid named Shiona, responsible for attending to Lady Vivielle. Although the gatekeeper expresses doubt, Vivielle confidently insists that he has seen her before. Nervously, she hopes that her lie will be accepted. After a brief moment of contemplation, the gatekeeper, uncertain, allows her to pass, admitting his poor memory for faces. Vivielle feels a sense of relief, believing that they have bought her deception. Reflecting on her circumstances, she acknowledges that this is her first time venturing beyond the castle walls. She expresses her desire to find a way to revert to her childhood self, while also yearning to witness firsthand how the world has changed in the centuries since her death. Despite her unpleasant memories of Ion in her previous life, Vivielle is curious about its development. Stepping outside the manor, she is taken aback by the sight of chaotic and dilapidated houses, shocked by the extent of the devastation. This stark contrast to her memories of Ion leaves her feeling saddened. Vivielle finds solace under a tree, finally comprehending the discussions she overheard among the attendants. They had been conversing about Nine's collapsed house and her imminent relocation to the Mud Hut village, expressing concern for her unfortunate circumstances. They also worried about the potential impact of heavy rain on their own homes. Vivielle reflects on her earlier confusion, now realizing the dire situation that exists beyond the castle walls. She ponders how Ion deteriorated to such a state and whether a past event marked the beginning of its downfall. The following morning, Viv awakens, only to realize that she has not reverted back to her child form. This realization frustrates her, prompting her to contemplate her current situation and decide to explore her surroundings. In an attempt to sell an ornamental dagger she had taken from the manor, Viv visits a shop. However, the shopkeeper offers her a mere 1 gold coin for it, much to her dismay. Viv argues that the dagger's design is unique and should be worth more. Reluctantly, the shopkeeper agrees to give her 1 gold coin and 2 silver coins. As the shopkeeper grumbles about his family's prestigious past in constructing grand waterways, he expresses his disappointment at being reduced to trading insignificant items for spare change. This piques Viv's curiosity, leading her to question a man about his family background and knowledge of waterway construction. The man admits that he has never had the opportunity to build new structures, only being involved in repairs. Dismissively, the man urges Viv to take the money and leave, ending any further conversation. Viv wonders to herself why there are no new buildings being constructed in the area. Continuing on her journey, she reflects on the absence of architects and the state of disrepair surrounding her. She realizes that even if she desired to stay at an inn, they are all on the verge of collapsing, making it no different from sleeping on the streets. Feeling nervous, Viv contemplates her situation. Although she has obtained some money, she feels lost and unsure of what to do next. She worries about not being able to revert back to her child form, which means she cannot reunite with Elisa and the other maids. Viv deeply regrets her previous desire to grow up quickly, wishing she could turn back time and undo her wish. Suddenly, she experiences dizziness, queasiness, and drowsiness. Collapsing to the ground, the ring on her finger glints once more, causing her to transform back into baby Viv in her groggy state. She hears someone commenting on her sleeping state and her apparent wealth, suggesting that they can profit from her. As Viv starts to regain consciousness, she feels nauseous. The men notice her awakening and mockingly laugh. Upon catching sight of them, Viv is overcome with fear and comes to the realization that she has regressed back into her childhood. However, she is unable to recognize the men and is left wondering about their identities. One of the men closely examines Viv's face, hinting at the possibility of selling her at a high price. Terrified, Viv contemplates her next move. Both men then take Viv along with them, instructing her to enter a building. It dawns on Viv that she must escape before she is sold off as a slave. When one of the men questions whether she plans to flee, Viv shakes her head in denial. The man warns her not to diminish her value any further and threatens her with consequences if she attempts to run away, causing her to tremble in fear. Viv nods in understanding, acknowledging their conversation. She deduces that the men are remnants of the bandit horde her father had defeated. As she ponders their true identities, she overhears voices from outside discussing the idea of hiding her alongside without their boss finding out. Viv flinches at the suggestion. Another man expresses disbelief, questioning the sanity of keeping such a secret from their boss. One of the men suggests that if they remain silent, they can keep all the profits for themselves. Another reluctantly agrees, expressing hope that nothing goes awry. Meanwhile, Viv contemplates the situation, worried about the prospect of being near and the potential consequences if she falls out of favor with the men. She reflects on the unfairness of possibly being sold in her third life. Despite her fears, Vivi realizes that she cannot afford to be passive, especially considering her past experiences. Determined, she resolves to explore her surroundings. Caught off guard, she discovers that the barracks are cleaner and more spacious than she had anticipated. Vivi sniffs the air and notices the absence of the scent of blood or decay, and there is nothing suspicious in sight. However, her attention is suddenly drawn to someone sleeping under a blanket. Terrified, She almost jumps out of her skin but decides to check on the person. Feeling his cold skin, she discovers he still has a pulse. With a pounding heart, Vivi attempts to wake him up. Vivi studies the boy, noticing that despite his nickname, Vivi urges him to wake up, expressing a desire to escape together and promising to treat him to something delicious if they succeed. Despite her efforts, there is no response from the boy. Vivi observes that he is wearing a mask and has shackles on his ankles. Deciding to remove them to make him more comfortable, as Vivi reaches out to take off the mask, she accidentally trips and falls backward, exclaiming in pain. Anxiously, she stands up and wonders what just happened. Suddenly, she hears loud noises, causing her to startle. People outside are running around in panic, shouting about a surprise attack. Vivi realizes the gravity of the situation and fears for her life if it is a power struggle among bandits. Despite not fully comprehending the situation, she decides to seize the opportunity amidst the chaos and escape. She acknowledges the advantage of being in the body of a child for sneaking and hiding, but worries about the unconscious boy Kn. He is alive, and she cannot abandon him. Contemplating her next move, Duke questions Balin about locating Lady Vivielle, but Balin admits they have not found her yet. The Duke clenches his fists, suspecting a connection to the bandits. Balin explains that with the bandits losing half their group in a recent attack, it is unlikely they could infiltrate to kidnap Lady Vivielle. The Duke is displeased, questioning if Balin even investigated the matter. Balin assures him they did. The Duke inquires about Sir Ortez and a group of knights hiding in the forest to monitor the bandits. Deciding he must go there as well, despite Balon's concerns about his injury, the Duke insists that he is fine. Balin obediently agrees to his wishes, and Vivi tries to wake up the boy urgently, calling out to him. However, when he doesn't respond, she sadly acknowledges that despite his good looks, there is nothing more she can do. With a heavy heart, she bids him goodbye, feeling like she has done her best. Before leaving the tent, she pleads for no one to be outside. However, as she exits, she notices someone's leg and panics, apologizing and begging for mercy, fearing for her life. Realizing that she doesn't want to die in such a place, Vivi recognizes the Duke's voice as he locates her, realizing that he is her father. He expresses his relief at finding her, and Vivi wonders if the commotion she heard was to save her. Despite House N. Down's ruthless reputation, she didn't expect her father to come to her rescue. Unsure how to react, she debates whether to act cute, embrace him, or politely thank him. Overwhelmed, she begins to sob, remembering how her father had always come to her rescue in desperate situations, just like the day he saved her from that woman. The Duke reassures Vivi that she is no longer in danger and tells her not to cry. Tearfully, Vivi asks if he came to save her again, and he confirms that was his intention. He invites her to go home with him, and she agrees happily. In her thoughts, Vivi reflects on her wish for kindness from everyone and feels that she has received more than she asked for. Vivi informs the Duke about the child lying nearby, and he picks up the child and brings him outside, asking Vivi what she wants to do with him. Considering that leaving him there would leave him vulnerable to being kidnapped again by the bandits, Vivi expresses her determination to take him with her. The Duke agrees, and in the carriage, she sits Vivi on his lap. The Duke announces their arrival at the castle, and Elisa rushes to Vivi when she sees her, expressing her worry and embracing her. Other maids also become emotional witnessing the reunion. Vivi reassures Elisa that she didn't do anything wrong. Elisa expresses anger towards the perpetrators for daring to take Viv. Vivi notices that everyone seems distressed because of her disappearance, but she can't reveal that she went out on her own. Balin asks about her well-being, and Vivi puts on a smile but is interrupted by her growling stomach, indicating hunger. She admits that she's now fine. Vivi realizes that she hasn't eaten anything since her birthday party. After taking a shower and feeling refreshed, Vivi enjoys her meal, commenting on its delightful crispiness on the outside and softness on the inside. She wonders who prepared the food for her and decides to compliment them later. Leah enthusiastically offers her some fruit, feeding her and prompting her to say, "Ah." Vivi then remembers the boy they brought home earlier and asks about his condition. Balin informs her that he's still unconscious, and the Duke believes he's under a complex curse. Vivi expresses disbelief at the idea of someone cursing such a young boy but feels relieved that both of them made it out alive and that she was able to reunite with everyone. She feels touched and happy that her father came to get her despite the events of the previous night, and overall, she feels extremely happy. Elisa accompanies Vivi as they walk together. Vivi asks Elisa if she thinks her father is truly a kind person, to which Elisa responds affirmatively, praising him as the most gracious person in the world. Suddenly, they hear the Duke's voice calling for everyone. They turn to see her father and guards nearby, sensing that something is amiss. One of the guards begs for forgiveness from the Duke for an incident that happened that day. Vivi feels guilty, realizing that the guards are there because she secretly sneaked out. The Duke's anger subsides as he questions the guards' competence and offers them a chance to take their own lives within an hour. Vivi is taken aback by this so-called mercy, realizing the severity of the situation. Observing the guards, she recognizes them as the ones who were supposed to be on duty when she left the estate. One of the guards, accepting the Duke's decision, reaches for a sword. Vivi is stunned by the unfolding events, never expecting things to escalate to this level. Vivi steps in, pleading for a halt to the impending tragedy. She rushes to her father, tears streaming down her face, and firmly tells him that he cannot go through with the executions. The Duke, bewildered, calls out to Vivi by name. Vivi pretends to be scared and tearful. The Duke, taken aback, questions if he is truly frightening. Elisa comforts Vivi, assuring her that the Duke will show mercy, urging her to stop crying. Seeking reassurance, Vivi implores the Duke not to harm anyone, realizing she cannot bear the guilt of innocent lives lost due to her actions. The Duke relents, agreeing that execution is too severe a punishment. Vivi, still in tears, pleads with a sweet expression, insisting that not a single soul should be harmed. The Duke promises not to harm anyone. Touched by Vivi's intervention, the guards express their gratitude to Lady Viv and the Duke. The Duke addresses the guards firmly, deciding to dock their pay for a week instead. The guards thank the Duke, hailing Vivi as their savior and heroine. Overwhelmed, Vivi whispers to Elisa that they should depart, and Elisa agrees to accompany her. Vivi reflects on the day's events, pondering how everything unfolded due to her sudden transformation into an adult and back into a child overnight. She worries about the uncertainty of whether such a thing could happen again. Wanting to check on the boy they brought home, she asks Elisa if he has woken up yet. Elisa responds ambiguously. Just then, the Duke arrives and informs them that the boy has been relocated elsewhere for better care. Vivi is taken aback by this news. The Duke explains that they moved him to aid in his recovery, but they are unsure when he will awaken. Anxiously, Vivi wonders about the severity of his condition, questioning if even the family doctor or house endon couldn't treat him. The Duke addresses Vivi, who responds affirmatively. He then becomes serious, questioning her decision to visit the boy before coming to see him. Vivi, feeling nervous, is unsure why he is reacting this way and wonders if he is angry. Hesitatingly, she explains that she was planning to see him before going to bed. The Duke presses further, asking why. Vivi, thinking strategically, tells him that if she sees him before sleeping, she feels she'll be able to see him in her dreams, hoping to melt his heart. The Duke acknowledges her explanation and announces his departure. Vivi, feeling uncertain, wonders if her response failed to garner his approval. In her room, Jade asks Vivi what she's thinking about. Startled, Vivi responds that she was just admiring how pretty her pajamas are, though it's a lie. Jade mentions that she and Lydia made the pajamas together. Vivi expresses gratitude, though she feels they didn't have to do that. Jade laughs and wishes she could record Viv's reaction with a video stone, expressing impatience for a delivery. Lydia chimes in, saying it only compels them to do more. Vivi then heads to her father's room to bid him good night. The Duke, seated in a chair, is reading something. He instructs Vivi to take a seat on the nearby sofa, to which Vivi agrees. Vivi notices a teacup on the table and wonders about it. The Duke remarks that it's pretty chilly, suggesting she should drink it to avoid catching a cold. Nervously, Vivi thinks to herself that his words make it sound like there's poison in the cup. She trembles as she drinks, but the Duke interrupts, cautioning her to drink slowly because it's hot. Relieved, Vivi realizes she was about to gulp it down in fear. She then happily realizes it's hot cocoa, feeling the warmth spread through her body.